Choose Your Own Path here. We're making the epoxy, we're mixing the epoxy for the sign and for the old piece of wood that is in front of me. So I've got a pretty big batch here. I'm just using the rest of it. I'm using the pour-on system. It's a chemical that has a 2-part epoxy. So what you got to do is you really got to get this stuff mixed up. If not, what happens is it won't cure. So as you can see, come a little closer here, you can see yesterday we poured, it's been 24 hours this has been sitting, we poured half. So we always do half, never do full amounts. This guy here has the epoxy, but it also has a blue metallic paint to it, which in the light, we're kind of dark here. We're at my neighbor's place here. He let us use his garage, just his basement, to do the work in, because I just don't have the room in my shop. It's just way too cold. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start off by pouring inside the logo, and then we'll get into this round part, into the letters, and then we'll just use a sponge brush and we'll just wipe around. And then we'll go about just putting a fine layer on that. So there we go. So I'm just going to drop it in there, like so. And now I'm not worried about getting it over the sides or anything like that. I'll end up probably having to do another batch in order to get this even. But it's going to look super good when it's done. Now when using this kind of epoxy, you only have a certain amount of time before it hardens, it cures. So you have to work a little bit faster. You probably got about 15 minutes, 20 minutes before it won't move anymore. So it's very important to get into all the spots you need to get it into. And like I said, good possibility we're gonna have to do a second batch for the lettering and all that. So just make sure I got all the main areas covered. The A right away. Now the epoxy will set again. It takes a good 24 hours to set. So we're just going to do a good pour. We'll set this guy aside for a second. And then with the brush, gravity is trying to pull it to everywhere else, meaning that it's not sitting on a very level surface. Don't bump into the table, please, Jaden. So what we're going to do is we'll just spread this out evenly. This is a method called chopping. What it does is it allows it to mix, and it allows the air bubbles to sort of pop. So what we want to do is we want to try to get it into as much even as we can, and it will go all over the place. That's what this stuff does. But we want to try to get it so we can fill up the whole space. And as we're doing that, we're just sort of wiping the board. The bubbles, there will be bubbles, but we have a blowtorch that we're going to use.
That I may have knocked down.
that my camera girl knocked down. So when I do this, I basically chop it so that it gets into all the spots. Using this is a bigger project that when you're doing this kind of work, you try to do like sort of small sections, like the lettering I should have done at the end, but that's okay. What's gonna happen is we're just gonna add around here. So there's definitely not enough epoxy to do the whole surface like I'd like to do, so I'm going to have to mix another batch. I'll have time to do it, but I'm playing with time here by doing this, because I'm just going to move this over just a bit. You want to try to get at least a level surface, so that the epoxy can run into all areas. That's the hardest part about working with epoxy, I think. So we're just gonna muck this up. The sides are okay to do this way. It's just that we want to cover it so it stays protected, and just in case the customer wants this outside in the elements. If not, if it's inside, it's fine. With the heat that we're going to use, it will even out. It want to make it move. What I could do is not make another batch and let this dry, and then set a third batch on top of it later on. That would work also. That's kind of a good idea to do too when you're working with multi-layers of epoxy. But you want to try to keep everything at least somewhat level. So I don't care for using too much of the sponge brush as much. The sponge brush sometimes will come apart, and then what happens is it gets into your product, like on your piece. Not always a desirable thing, but it just happens. So what we're gonna do is just don't lean against that yet. So what we're just gonna do is get as much as we can around here. This is the second pour that I've done, and took 24 hours to dry. Most definitely is going to have to take a third pour. Just to get it to even itself out. There's a sanding process you could do with this. When it's dry, you could sand it down. It's not necessary. I don't use that method of sanding. It doesn't really overly matter, but you can use it. And the sanding, what it would do is it would even it out, and then the next pour. But the flood coat is the last coat you put on here. The flood coat is basically just pouring it on the top and then spreading it around so that it's good. The drips will occur, meaning that it will drip on the sides. I'm just going to spin around here, Gene. Again, it will drip, but that's okay. You could sand the back layer, which is going to be hung up on the wall anyway, so which is okay. But what we want to do is just take a good look at what we're playing with here. Kind of just spread it around, even if you didn't get it all the way in, because like I said, we only have a certain amount of time before this will dry and dry. Once it dries hard, you can't move it anymore. So what I'm just trying to do is get into these corners here, try to get the top layer sort of even the whole thing out. What I'll do is I'll add some in here. Brush too. The sponge brush absorbs a lot of it. Now, what we'll do is we'll just make sure, just by looking at it at different angles, see, we'll try to spread it out evenly on the top. Now I know myself there's bubbles that have occurred that are forming on the top of this automatically. I can see it at my angle, what I'm looking for. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take that off. 1 second. You're gonna have to back up just a little bit, Gina.
Yeah. Like, if that's okay?
You're good. So, the method of doing this is not to let the flame sit too long on one area. Basically just going around and around, trying to get the bubbles out, but not by touching it. Now what the flame will do is it will also move the epoxy and it'll lay it out flat. And then sometimes you have to just play with it to get it back in order, and then just a little touch. Everything goes out. Good. So quickly what I'll do is open up and just pour enough into each container to make it so that we can put them into the lettering now. So we'll give it a good cupful of each. Good. Now again, this is a 2-part epoxy, so it does. What's that?
Just show me.
Yeah, it's the pour one.
That's what it looks like.
They have to be equally the same amounts in each one. So we do our best to
We use measuring cups.
measuring cups, yeah. And then you really have to give it a good mixing. Yeah, I got it. Get as much everything out of the cup as you can. I'm using a glass jar. The glass jar won't allow the epoxy to harden as fast as, say, using a plastic cup. Learned that the hard way. Have a little bit more time to play with it, to mix it and so on. Okay, get rid of that.
And then that one.
Yeah. So we're just gonna pour that in there quickly.
Okay.
Hey?
Dry.
No, it takes a bit, but it will dry. If you leave it, it will dry.
I mean, if you leave it there, then if it dries, it'll look so cool.
Yeah, it won't dry well if you don't mix it.
No, but if you mix it.
Always wear gloves. always wear gloves when you're doing this. Epoxy is pretty toxic. It's got stuff in it. It's not the best. So what you're looking for when you're mixing it is a milky kind of a color. It's a milky color. It's not see-through anymore. So what happens is you really got to give it a good mix.
A bunch of bubbles.
Yeah, it's got bubbles. Something in it. Really important to mix it for at least a minute or two to really get it all together. If not, just don't inhale those. Look for that. So what like I said, what we're looking for is like a milky kind of color mixture. So a good minute or so of good mixing for sure. Get all the edges okay. So that's pretty much what I'm looking for, is that color. You don't have to worry about the bubbles on the inside. So now I'm just going to pour them into the lettering.
You want me to bring this up?
No.
It's not really dry when you put it on. It doesn't look dry.
Well, it's not going to be dry.
It's not clear, I mean. Not
No,
dry.
it'll clear.
It doesn't look clear when you put it on.
As it dries, it clears.
It's moving this way because it just looks like it put it this way. So,
Now I might have miscalculated this pour also. Maybe I'll need more.
put that. Yeah, you got it.
But what we're gonna do today is we're just gonna pour what we have into the lettering. It's okay. We're gonna pour this one into the lettering as much as we got. And we're gonna let it harden, and we're gonna definitely do a third pour tomorrow after 24 hours to fill in the rest. I'm more than positive we don't have enough for it all. So what we'll do is we'll take our brush, scrape out as much as we can, get it. We might get lucky here. We might have enough for the whole, just enough to get in the whole thing, but this, I know the C has, didn't get as much as the rest of them. The tea is very full. The yolk has quite a bit in it, but probably could still use a little bit more. What I'm doing is I'm chopping it in so it also mixes a little bit better. See, yeah, the end definitely does not have enough in it. Try to get as much as we can out of here. It's nice that I'm wearing gloves so I could get the rest off of this brush, put it in there. Okay, so I'm just going to try to even it out a bit. much as I can. Get the sides done. Just one. Almost done. Stretch it out here. Right. So just paying attention to like the letterings, you can see, like if the show you here on the end, you can see how the bubbles, how it's formed. It's all white. Let's take a look at what's doing what flavor. Not too far, you're so look at the end and how it just disappears. That's all the air bubbles that are in there. Now we're gonna make it. You definitely want to get all the air bubbles out. So you gotta try to get into every little crack and corner. Like I said, it's just a touch and go kind of a release. This. That will dry clear. I'll try to dry crystal clear when it's done. Try to get some all over the edges. Almost done. Okay, so we're gonna let it dry for 24 hours. You can tell that it's gonna have a little bit of different spots to it. Some look higher and some look lower. The last coat will be called a flood coat, and that's where basically all we're gonna do is take all our epoxy that we have, well not all of it, but take the epoxy, and we're gonna flood the whole thing to one even coat. We may put a sand on it. So now that the epoxy is somewhat even all the way through. Alrighty. Alright, thanks for watching, and we'll get back to you.